thanks a million for doing this, first of all.
Yeah, sure.
It's a
Cool.
pleasure. Is that coffee in your cup there?
It is. Yeah.
What's the coffee scene like in Vegas?
Uh, it's all right.
I say there's a
You
lot of
know,
chains, is there?
yeah, a lot of chains. Dutch Brothers, Pete's, and but I like. There's a spot I just discovered, Royal, which is pretty good
Hmm.
for cold brew, especially. But my wife and I, it's been maybe 6 or 7 years before we were married. We took a trip to Hawaii, and we spent some time in Kauai, and we toured the Kauai Coffee Company, and since then, every month we order in Kauai coffee. So we get our coffee shipped in from Hawaii, and that's what we drink every morning. So
That's cool.
uh, it is quite delicious. Yes.
Yeah, that's
Um,
that's the second. I talked to Will Morad yesterday,
yeah.
and he referenced Hawaii.
Yeah.
He was talking about having coffee with Pat Barber in Hawaii.
Mm.
But yeah, no, I must hunt some out because it's not somewhere I'd associate with coffee. I don't know, maybe just
Oh yeah.
In Europe it hasn't. It's always like South American or African, and then India's kind of creeping in a little bit lately as well.
So Hawaii is more known for something called Kona coffee, which is some of the best in the world. It's, you know what it is? It's the volcanic, like,
Yeah.
ground and
Fertility,
stuff.
yeah.
Makes it very fertile. But Kauai, we love it. It's not bitter. It's delicious. But an interesting story about coffee is I didn't drink coffee until probably it's been maybe 10 years since I even started drinking coffee. I didn't drink much coffee, and prior to um, my it's like I've lived two lives. Prior to my fitness life, I was a recording artist and performer, and so I and then in there was an overlap where I was still owned my own box and was coaching, but I still was gigging. And so anyway, I had a gig in Monte Carlo. I was working with a band. We did the Red Cross Gala Ball for the Prince of Monaco, and
As you do, yeah.
yeah, as you do, Beckham was there at that one, actually. But we opened for Joe Cocker, which was pretty cool. But anyway, the drummer and I were just chilling in a cafe in Monte Carlo, and he was like, "Come on, bro, you got to have an espresso." We're just sitting here hanging out. It's beautiful, having an espresso. I was like, "All right, fuck it," So I started drinking espresso first, and
That's
when I
in at the
came
deep
back,
end as well.
I know. Well, yeah, I don't. Yeah, that's just me usually. I don't fuck around too much. So I came home and I liked it and started drinking espresso, and then eventually, got into coffee more. And my wife, Ashley, at the time we were dating, but she is definitely more of a coffee connoisseur and a wine connoisseur than I am, and has kind of, she would like to say, has kind of shaped me and educated me on both. I'll agree. And But yeah, so that was kind of how it started.
Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah, and so that's the coffee journey.
Do you listen to a lot of podcasts?
I listen to some, but I would say with a 4-year-old and a 9-month-old and no family to speak of here.
Oh, I mean, kids are so understanding. If you're like, just 1 minute, I just want to hear the end of it.
Oh my God. So
I've started watching so many videos and started listening to so many interviews, and literally gotten about 5 minutes in and be like, nope, okay, I'll never hear the end of that. That's it, gone forever.
Yeah. You know what it is? It's like, essentially it's from the morning, like the moment you get up until the moment they go to sleep. It's nonstop.
Yeah.
As far as, especially for us, kind of juggling and figuring out, how to kind of conduct the day. especially with COVID and so many things shut down, and but so I find that like most of my work, I don't, programming and all that stuff, I don't really get done until the evening, and then by that time I'm just fucking exhausted, like. So it's hard to listen to a lot of stuff. It's hard to read. It's hard to, sometimes you just want to sit there, and do nothing, and you throw something on TV and then pass out on the couch.
I mean, I'm relatively sure that all the viewing figures for Cobra Kai are parents who their kids are gone to bed and they just turn on Netflix and they just want like brain floss of like, I don't want to think or have to
I
follow
have
a
watched
structure.
I have watched Cobra Kai.
Oh, so have I. And purely for that reason, where it's like,
It's
just put on
great.
Cobra Kai, I don't care.
It's great, and it's like they're like 25-minute episodes on repeat. It's just it's so easy.
Yeah.
But yeah, man, it's funny. I've done a few more podcasts, this since the games. So that's been cool. And
you've written articles as well, I think, and
yeah.
You've been interviewed either, I suppose, in the written format or like this, like in video or audio podcast. Like, is that like, do you enjoy doing that, or like, is there one you rather over the other? Like, say, being creative yourself and writing something up, or being asked questions? Is there one that's like maybe more pressure or one that's less pressure?
I feel pretty comfortable doing either. I was an English literature major, so I love writing, and it's nice to have that outlet. And so doing some op-eds for people is really cool for me. But I like doing interviews. I think it's the performer in me. Like I feel very comfortable in front of the camera, and when I was coaching grid, you know, like that was a huge piece of it, when the NPGL was going on. And obviously when Tony Budding came from CrossFit, he was the head of media. And, our first year we had a contract with NBC, and, as the coach of the DC Brawlers, we won the championship. There was just constantly interviews. And, so you kind of get your chops up with that stuff, so that was really cool. And honestly, like, I don't know, I feel like CrossFit needs more personalities, I think it's one of those sports that everybody kind of like, kind of stays status quo, and the truth is that, I feel like we haven't been able to rock the boat a lot over the years. And I have a little bit, and it's definitely, got me blocked by Castro on Instagram and various other things, which is fine.
I was going to say, like, when you're chatting or doing an interview in whatever medium, when you hang up the call or walk away from the microphone, like, do you ever have thoughts afterwards where you're like, oh fuck, I shouldn't have said that?
I don't recall doing that. I maybe once or twice, but not so much, I mean, at the end of the day, like I don't feel like I've ever said anything that has deliberately like hurt anyone, and I think if I'm gonna say it, it's what I think is the truth, or what I think is, it might be controversial, but I think in the past, especially with CrossFit, the old guard, you couldn't really say anything. You couldn't critique. You weren't allowed really to criticize, or you'd be excommunicated. And, I feel like at least now there's a platform to say some things, which is cool. And being a part of this year's games, and the intimacy of the athletes and the coaches, and actually having, at the end of the games, like we will go out to dinner, and sitting at a table with Eric Rosa and Castro, and literally, you're there for an hour and a half, 2 hours, and having conversations. And that shit's just never, that's never happened. And being able to express opinions and etc. Was cool, but I don't know. I think coaches in general have been extremely disrespected and undervalued over the years
I
at the
was,
games.
yeah, I
So
was gonna actually ask you about that. So I heard you mention that before,
yeah,
and it kind of the conversation on it kind of seemed to fizzle out a little bit. I was curious, like, what kind of disrespects do you like? How do you think that was manifested for you?
yeah. I just think that there are very few professional sports where the coaches are devalued the way they have been in CrossFit. The way leading up to the elite, the paramount competition of the year, the biggest event of the year, it would be like going to the Olympics or going to the Super Bowl or you know or the World Cup finals or something along those lines. And the coach gets an email that says you're a spectator with limited access. Like you're not allowed to do this, and this. It's like, you know,
Did you actually
really?
get an email saying
Oh
like
yeah, of course. Oh,
in
every
with
year.
that wording, like?
Oh, the words were you are a spectator with limited access and a list of what you cannot
Mad.
do. And it would get worse every year. Every single year it would get worse. It would get worse to the point where we weren't allowed, we had to buy our own tickets
Yeah.
the last couple of years. Like, you know, there, it was just a feeling of, it was almost like they got off a little bit on fucking with us,
Do you
like,
think? Yeah, like one of the things that they always talk about is like that unknown and unknowables. Like, do you think that that's is it for? Because I know I've spoken to a couple of athletes, say even Emma from Ireland, who was there like 2 years ago or whatever, Madison, and she was saying that like it was unusual that you were preparing for an event and you were just kind of on your own. So she then made it the next sanctional she was at, like when she went to Filthy, she didn't engage with her coach at all for the weekend because she wanted to see, like, can I do it on my own if needs be, if that happens? Like, do you think that it's
yeah.
kind of to fuck with the athletes a little bit and put them off center maybe?
I think it is. I think it can be. I'm sure they'll say it's logistical too. Too many
Mm,
people, blah blah blah. But I mean, this year we had a ton of access,
yeah.
and this year, it was. I think it was, and I think the athletes would tell you that they appreciated it and flourished so much more by being able to have that connection. And I also think just if we're trying to push this sport out of the realm of niche sport and into the realm of recognizable professional sport, that you know the coaches are a very valuable asset, and to devalue us, I think, is a mistake. I just think
Yeah.
it is. I think especially because most of us are affiliate owners, most of us drive the sport. Most of us are coaching the next phase of athletes. A lot of the younger athletes coming up. It doesn't make sense to piss us off.
Yeah.
I don't think it does.
I think
Um,
there is a kind of a shift in power, I think, maybe with social media and, like um podcasts and interviews and stuff like that, like the documentaries and stuff. There is more of a focus, especially with Shane coming in, uh and like a lot of people have followed his journey, and then you've got like the likes of Ben from the old guard, would say. We've got like Tasia working with Haley, we've got Adam working with Justin. Like the coaches are kind of going to the coming to the forefront a bit more and being a bit more in the limelight. So I'm sure those scenarios are at least a lot less likely to come up, because it would piss twice as many people off now because the coaches have fans now.
I think so. And really, man, what was so cool this year, and I've obviously gotten to spend a lot of time with coaches over the years, and have good relationships with most of them, I would say. But really, and I'm sure they told you this as well, because I know you spoke to a few of them. But like Shane and I at most competitions have always hung out. Like he and I are super cool. But like getting to spend time with Adam, I had never really spent time with Adam. I just
Mm.
know, back in the day, CrossFit Dynamics, My Box, and Fort Vancouver, we just always had a team at the games, and we were competitors, right? Like,
Mm.
but getting able to bond with him, being able to bond with Max, Noah's coach, and guys that obviously know, but didn't really consider friends, I would say, and it was so cool to, it was a once in a lifetime experience, I think, for all of us, because I don't think it'll ever be like that
Mm.
again, to kind of be in that bubble, 10 athletes, 10 coaches, and have the time to be able to spend together and really bond with a lot of them and talk about philosophies and life and family and all that stuff, you know. And I think what's great about it is those relationships will carry over. And now, you know, we'll call, you know, Adam up and see what Justin's doing and have him come down to Vegas and come to an athlete camp and hang out, or an athlete camp, or, you know, there's just, it's really cool the way, you know, the way we were all able to bond, I think. And it was a very special environment, and that I think all of us kind of understand is probably not something we're gonna experience again.
Yeah, I think as well, Adam's probably it's a handy number to have in your phone book if you're ever feeling pissed off, because like Mr. Positivity, I don't think it'd
Oh
be
my
possible
God,
to hang up a phone call and not
it's
be
awesome.
laughing or smiling.
So
Like,
awesome. Such a good dude. Yeah, he's
um,
great.
obviously, like, you know, you're well established as a coach, and you know you've proved yourself repeatedly. But like, you know, I suppose the human side of people, you know, taking away the professional side, people tend to be vulnerable or a bit self-conscious or whatever. Like, did you ever feel in those, say, most recently at the games this year, like out of place maybe, or like, you know, when you're surrounded by people like that, when you're surrounded by the best coaches and the best programmers, are you ever like, shit, like, what if I, like, what am I doing here? Or are you, have you built up so much confidence that it literally doesn't phase you anymore?
Yeah, I think at the beginning, you know, I mean, listen, the first games athlete I coached was 2010. So you know, and then from there, you know, having games athletes, and then um, I also think, I think the experience of coaching CrossFit, but then the experience of coaching grid and being a two-time championship coach with a ton of other really big name coaches who couldn't hack it as grid coaches. Um, Truthfully, you know, like that was a major confidence builder. And then also I think just trusting, you know, like I'm, you know, to my own fault probably. You know, over the years, I think I've really focused more on my athletes and coaching than I have on building my brand. Um, you know, I don't have a huge online following. I don't have a big online programming. We have a successful affiliate that we own, and obviously, I've been successful coaching athletes. But I think I'm so I get so focused and emotionally invested in the athletes and in the coaching side of it, that probably the business side of it has lacked, you know, has lacked a bit, which my wife would kick my ass for. But it's just my passion is in the competition, and is in you know, bringing the maximum potential out of my athletes. And I feel very confident in my abilities to do that. And so while I
If
approve,
you're sorry, if you're getting like, you know, emotionally invested in your athlete or athletes that you're working with, does that make it like more difficult then to coach a team? Because if you got six or four people, like, do you become as invested in each of those individuals on the team, or like it must be, you know, 10 times as hard having.
that's why I haven't coached a team since 2016. Yeah,
Is that the reason why?
yeah. Just so that team I coached, we came in fourth at the games, which was a bit of a letdown, honestly. And I love those guys, and you know, but it took so much out of me, and you know, melding the personalities, and it just, yeah. And that was the last year I coached any team, because 2016 was the last year of grid, and it was the last year I coached an affiliate team. And I programmed for teams since then, but I haven't coached, and
Hmm.
I I don't know when I will again. Um, it's just a whole different animal, you know. You're having to, like I said, you're having to meld personalities. You're having to deal with different emotions every day, and it's really hard.
Hmm.
But incredibly rewarding. Like I love coaching teams, but it's something that like I just needed to take a break from, because I did it for several years in a row, and it was just like, okay, you know. So now just has been just individuals.
Is it more
And
intense with the individual? Like, is it more intense? Say, especially like Carrie, someone who you've worked with for a while. Does it get more? Does it kind of build towards a crescendo where there's like you must have just had an incredible release this year when it was just like, oh, thank God, like.
yeah, I just was so happy for her, you know, because I think Carrie is just one of those athletes that, like, she finally got her just due, you know. I mean, she's been in the top 10 for so many years, and she's had you know, the top finishes, and is the most decorated American female CrossFitter ever now. But I think that that the podium was the, you know, that was what she needed,
Mm.
really, to kind of get people to be like, holy shit, this is like a total badass.
Yeah, like
Um,
I'm not saying there's a direct correlation, but the year that she came on my show was the same year that she podiumed. So I mean, we can prove that it wasn't a direct result of that. So
Listen, I'm all for it. We'll just make sure we do it again, right? Like
yeah.
right before the games and shit. But yeah, man, I really, I think with any of the athletes that I coach, it, like I said, it's yeah, I can't help it. Like I've said in the past, it's just, you know, they trust you with their livelihood, right? Like they've put their trust in you as their coach, like, and you can't take that lightly. You kind of have to hold that in the highest regard,
Yeah.
and you can't help but immediately feel, for me, like I can't help but immediately feel a love for that person, you know, like, I know it sounds a bit hokey, but that's just the way it is, you know, because the trust that they put in you, there's such a short window as an athlete, right? Especially as a professional athlete. I mean, it's very short. And for them to trust you and to put that trust in you, and you know, say, okay, you guide me, that you can't help but feel such a strong bond and love for that athlete. And I think that for me, you know, that's just the way I'm built, right? A lot of coaches can separate and be like, this is a business relationship and blah. Not me. I just can't do it, you know.
Mm.
Which, and I'm fine with that, you know. Like that's just the way I'm built, and it works differently for different people.
Mm.
But I think for me, it's just that's been part of the success over the years,
Yeah.
has a bond.
Um, so I was looking you up earlier in the week doing research because you know I'm a professional,
You're a professional, yeah.
and I had to quadruple check some things. So you mentioned it earlier on, but you spent like 10 years as a recording artist, like is that straight out of college? Like I assume you had experience singing prior to that, like you know in high school, growing up and stuff like that.
Yeah, I could always sing. From, you know, like my mom will tell a story. I was 3 years old in the car. No. Okay,
No,
sorry
all
about
right,
that.
don't worry, don't
All
worry.
right, yeah. I would assume that happens in sometimes. I would hope it's not just me.
That's actually a first that someone dropped out mid call.
Oh fuck. I'm not technically savvy at all. I was trying to erase, like someone was calling me. I was trying to get rid of it. Yeah. So yeah. So my mom will tell a story like I was 3 years old in the car, and like listening. I think she said it was like Stevie Wonder or something came on, and I was like singing in perfect pitch, and she was like, "What is going on?" And like she remembers in kindergarten, she was like, yeah, so your teacher came and said like you were singing today, and she was like, Justin has a really good voice. And my mom was like, oh, I know, he sings in the car all the time, blah blah blah. So growing up, it just was it was one of those things I could do, but I never really pursued because I was always into sports.
Mm.
I was going from this practice to that practice to this practice. So in high school I sang, but it was one of those things where it was just my friends that knew I could. And when I got to college, I was playing sports. I played basketball and golf in college, and but my sophomore year, I saw a group on campus there was a there are those like
Acapella.
a cappella groups and that are registered with the school essentially, right? Like and one of the groups is a group called The Inspiration, which was an all black R&B a cappella group. That was exactly what I did. And I tried out for them, and I I made the group. And so there was 17 members and this white dude who was singing. And by the end of my time there, like I was one of the standout lead singers, and I knew that I either wanted to turn professional in golf or I wanted to be a singer, and I was a better singer than I was a golfer. I was a good golfer, but I was a better singer. So out of
What were you
college,
studying in college?
English literature.
Okay.
Yeah. And
I'm looking.
so
I'm hunting somewhere for a coaching link through all of this. I'm struggling to find one so far.
yeah. So just athletics in general.
Yeah.
I played, and then when I was a high school athlete, I trained with a bunch of other really good athletes in my area, a bunch of really like some of the best athletes in the county that I was in, called Broward County down in South Florida. And we trained with a strength coach called his name was Bill Ferran. He was a strength coach of the Miami Heat. So that's where I learned like how to squat, how to lift, how to do all those things. So there's kind of like the background of the coaching aspect.
Yeah.
But really, like the fitness side of things was just that I loved working out. And then as a singer, like purely for the aesthetics of it, right? Because I was a front man. Like, you take your shirt off and you want to make sure your
Can I
ribs,
just
right?
ask, sorry, is that you?
Yeah, that's me. Yeah.
Fuck, because I looked up, like
Yeah.
it came up linked on some article or something you'd written, and I
Yeah.
was like, okay, I look. It just said the name, so I looked it up on Spotify, and
Yeah.
I like clicked play, and I had heard you speak before, and I had seen you
Yeah.
before, but I pressed play, and I was like, nah, that's clearly a mistake. That must. I started going back out. Fucking incredible voice. Like,
Oh,
obviously
thanks, man.
you're a professional singer. Like I'm sure
Thanks.
you've heard that before, but yeah, it was that I was incredibly impressed with that. So
Thank you.
when you were singing, like,
Yeah.
did you have that in the back of your mind that coaching or sport was something that you wanted to return to, like
No.
somewhere down the line? No. And is there
No.
something that happened that kind of spawned it?
Yeah, actually. And you know what? This is cool because no one's ever asked me that question on a podcast. And I think it's an important, really, I think it's an important part of who I am that a lot of people don't know about. So, yeah, I was diagnosed when I was 18 years old. I was diagnosed with an autoimmune disease called ulcerative colitis,
Okay.
which is in the same family as Crohn's. And so for the majority of my youth, like between 18 and say 25ish, it was pretty much under control. But then, like in the decade of like 2000 to 2010, I definitely had a lot of issues. And for anyone that knows anything about ulcerative colitis, like the fluctuation in weight, like it's very hard to keep any weight on. You're constantly tired. It's a bitch of a disease. And so you know like I started my career as a singer in 1997. And I was just a really cocky kid who assumed that I was going to be the next big thing. And I was in a band at the time in Philadelphia, and we were really good and we were really popular, and we had gigs and we had interest from major labels, and we were doing this and doing that. And then all of a sudden the band broke up, and I moved with the guitarist to New York, and I signed a management deal, and I had a record deal, and I had all these things. And it was cool, but it wasn't taking off the way that I had expected it to. And if there are a lot of, they always say, like, there's really no such artist that's not a tortured artist. And I think as the years went on, that became more and more true. And by like 2003, 2004, I started to fall into a really bad way. Just, you
Like
know,
depression, kind of, is it? Or
yeah, it was just depression and just like lifestyle,
yeah.
like a lot of just not living the, like living an extremely unhealthy life. And I was still gigging a lot, but just not taking care of myself. I was sick a lot with colitis and, drinking a lot and, doing drugs and things. Some not terrible. I wasn't a drug addict, but like just, and I was becoming an extremely bitter artist.
Mm.
Not because I didn't love music, but because the music industry was just kicking my ass and wearing on me. And
Mm.
and one day I'd be up here, and the next day I'd be down here, and one day I'd be on tour, and the next day I'd be off tour, and be like, what the fuck is going on? Like, and then in 2007, I got the best tour that I had ever been on. I was a featured artist on Clear Channel. My record was on iTunes and was on the charts in Europe, and all these things were going well. And then halfway through the year, the bottom fell out. The tour went bankrupt. My management company went bankrupt, and I got really sick in 2007. And I ended up in the hospital. I lost 50 pounds in 3 weeks.
Fuck.
And when I checked into the hospital, I was 121 pounds with a resting heart rate of 110. And they thought they were going to have to cut my colon out because there was nothing that was working. So they put me on massive doses of Solumedrol, which is just intravenous steroid. And I was in the hospital for weeks. And basically then I was out of New York for about 3 months, and I was with my family in Florida rehabilitating. And when I came back from that, I kind of had an epiphany that if I continued on this path, I didn't know how much longer I'd be alive, really. And my buddy, there's a guy that I had worked out with for a while, who was a trainer, who was just a coach at a Globo gym, a really good guy. He was an actor as well. And he and I, when I got back, started doing a lot of functional fitness. Like at the time, Jim Jones was a website that we followed where like a lot of the guys in the movie 300 had trained, like Mark Twight. It was like a lot of power endurance and people who like trained to go to climb Everest and whatnot.
Mm.
And then we started to get into CrossFit a little bit, and then in 2008 was kind of that time where like I was like, I'm really liking this. I'm enjoying doing it myself. And he and I started to gain kind of like get more people to work out with us. And then we started coaching a class at a Globo gym at midnight on Thursday nights called Midnight Madness. And it was the only time that the Globo gym would let us do this type of training because they thought we were fucking crazy, right? And we developed like a little bit of a cult following with our training. And then I started coaching people in functional fitness, and then over the next few years, like I started to transition out of doing like my own music. I was still doing gigs because I love music, so I would get hired for big essentially what they called like club gigs or like entertainment bands. Like you go to a big wedding, right? And there's a 14-piece band up there, and they're, like I was doing that stuff. But then I was also doing personal training and stuff. And then I started to feel like I had found almost like a second calling. Like it was my new stage,
Yeah.
and
Was it
so
hard? Was it hard to dip your toe back into singing, like intermittently, after? Because I guess if your identity is kind of entangled with something, and then you realize that it's not good for you, and you need to change, and change things, is it hard then to kind of dip in and out of it after that?
Yeah, so I never stopped singing I was still gigging. But what really changed for me was I just no longer my my self-worth was no longer measured by a record deal or
Yeah.
by my, how things were going with my, um, like how many units you've sold, how many this is going, like, and once I cut that off, it was a different person. I just
Mm.
was, it was like a fucking weight that was lifted off of me that, and I never went back, and I don't miss that at all, honestly. I miss creating music, and I miss being in the studio, and I miss like the joy of being on stage and performing for people, and the looks that you get. And music takes you away, right? It's one of those things that can help people escape. But I also feel that what we do with fitness, it changes people's lives as well. And so that kind of became, my, like I said, it became the new outlet, the new stage for me.
Mm.
And then I knew that it was something that I had a talent at, and I knew something that coaching was something that I was good at. And then I went out on my own, in 2010, and have really never looked back.
Yeah.
You
I've
know,
seen
so
I've seen videos of grid online. It comes up a lot on my Instagram, obviously because of other shit that I'm looking at, I suppose. But like, in my mind, like CrossFit, like there's a joke that it's like adult PE or doing fitnessing fast or whatever. Grid is
right.
like doing fitnessing fast in this weird like spectacle. It's like a
Oh
cross
man.
between CrossFit and that like roller derby. Like it's like it's so fucking like extra. Like where
Oh
did your
man.
involvement come from with that?
Oh, that was so cool. It was really fun, man. Most fun time I've ever had,
Yeah.
coaching. Uh so obviously I knew about grid. I mean, everybody kind of knew about it, but it was really like, you know, it was at the time. I mean, shit, like, you if you dipped your toe in grid, you were going against the evil empire. Like CrossFit was not having it, especially because Tony was such a big piece of what CrossFit had done for so many
Mm.
years. And then he and Dave, it was like they just had a big dick fight, at that time. So I had a friend who was one of Tony Budding's assistants as he was building Grid. And and then I had a member at my affiliate who was an entrepreneur who basically was like, I want to try to put a team together. And so he was like, would you want to coach? Do you think
Mm.
you'd want to be the coach? And I I had success with teams, and when I started doing research about it, I was like, yeah, this sounds really cool. I mean, I had no idea what we were getting ourselves into, and we went to the Atlanta Combine, and we did a presentation for Tony, and next thing you know, we were one of the 8 original teams. And being one of the OGs in grid, like if you talk to the people who did grid, especially starting in the beginning, like the grid family is one of those things like you'll just always be a part of. I have
Mm.
relationships from grid, and that were that will be there forever. There's some of the best relationships I have still in sport, are from grid. But I think what we had to do as grid coaches, uh, you know, you were finally, CrossFit is where, as a coach, is much more preparatory, especially because most of the time you don't have access.
Mm.
This year is a little different, but in general, you prepare your athlete and then you go sit in the stands, and you
Mm.
don't have direct contact with them while things are going on. Grid was like was NFL, NBA, NHL. It was in-game speed chess. Who could outthink the other coach? Who could, and uh, and that's why you saw some of the better coaches in CrossFit just fall flat on their faces in grid, because it was different. It wasn't the same. You could prepare, but then when something went awry, you had to be able to adjust on the fly.
Mm.
And that was what was so cool about it. And it was the most stressful, like so stressful. Like it was crazy. I remember like the combine in Vegas, the first combine, which I think was the best assembly of athletes that I've ever seen in one place, because it wasn't just, there were good CrossFitters, but or some of the best CrossFitters, but it wasn't just, it was specialists. Like you had these weightlifting specialists and track specialists and all these guys that were so good at their individual sports who had come to try out for the sport. It was so sick. Like it was so cool. But I remember that whole week I didn't sleep because I was coaching so many matches and I was trying to learn the sport. Like we were learning on the fly. And I think I might have slept like three hours the whole fucking week. Like it was crazy. I was like so hopped up on coffee and just adrenaline the whole week. And I remember like when it was done, just crashing so hard. But it was
Looking at
awesome.
the looking back at videos and stuff of you coaching and that, the only disappointing thing I have is that you didn't wear a suit to the CrossFit Games this year,
I
because that would
know.
have been like that was
I
your
know.
opportunity.
Oh
You're
man.
never going to be that much on the sidelines. You could have been wearing your suit and pointing.
Yeah, we have to put that rule in. Coaches got to wear suits. Yeah,
Yeah,
I
yeah.
loved it. Yeah, that was so cool. It was just such an excuse to get decked. I loved it so much.
Yeah.
Uh, yeah, so it kind of brought out like the fashion, like my fashion side, which was such a big part of like the music.
Yeah, yeah.
like especially being a soul singer, like you had to kind of look fly on stage. You couldn't get up there in some bullshit outfit. So like. And fashion runs deep in my family. It's my sister's, like that's her profession, and like my parents are very stylish, and so it's something that I love. And but yeah, in CrossFit, you're just wearing your gym shit, so it's not.
We mentioned earlier Carrie, like she's obviously your I guess she's your current crown jewel. Most recently anyway. Like, where did your relationship with her begin?
Grid.
Great as well.
Yeah. So one of the athletes that I coached on the Brawlers was Carrie's teammate at the University of Michigan gymnastics. And when Carrie started to get into CrossFit, her name, Carrie's teammate, her name was Lindsay Borden, and married, became Lindsay Maneri. And she was one of the best athletes I've ever coached, and I think one of the best CrossFit athletes that no one will really ever know about, because she only went team. But she was she was an athlete who was just one of my favorite athletes to coach. Like just one of those athletes, like a Carrie, that nothing phased her. Just mentally incredibly tough and physically incredibly gifted. So when Carrie started, Carrie was up in New York, and Lindsay basically said, "You got to go see Justin." And she came to me. It was the beginning of 2015. It was the first time Carrie had been doing CrossFit for like 2 months. She'd been coming from, she was doing figure and then powerlifting after gymnastics. And she walked into the gym and she didn't really even know how to climb a rope. She didn't know how to do, but like she took off her sweatshirt and she was just fucking yoked. And everyone in the gym was like, "Who is this?" And so we started working together for a couple of weeks, and I started programming for her. And then still have the email. It's funny. I got an email from her saying, "Listen, I'm sorry, but the gym that I work for in the city, they've told me that I can't follow your programming. I have to follow the programming. I have to do their programming or they're going to fire me." So from that point, for a couple of years, we were just friends, and she would come to Dynamics because we had all the bells and whistles from having athletes that had trained for the games. Like, so we had the yokes, we had the worms, we had the pegboards, we had this. So she would come and train, and we had a great relationship. And then she also got drafted by the Boston Iron in grid. That year she never really did grid because she became so good at CrossFit and focused on CrossFit. But I met her through like my relationship with someone in grid, and then she and I would say became friends first, and then eventually when I think she had felt like she had kind of hit a plateau in her training, and with the coach that she was working with, and was, I think, was like, my goal is to get on the podium, and I feel like our relationship is really strong, and I trust that you can get me there. And, for the past few years, obviously we've had a lot of success, and
Mm.
she's just awesome, man. I can't speak enough, I just, it's just the most genuine, just the most amazing human being. Like I always say, for my daughter, if you want, it's just so awesome to have Carrie every day for my daughter to watch and just see as a role model of how to do things right. Like you just do things the right way, and how to treat people, and and she's just awesome. She's a coach's dream.
Mm.
There's not many like her.
Is
There's
it
not many like
difficult?
her.
Is it difficult to wipe the board clean and start again for 2021? So obviously, like a couple of things to take into consideration is that it was a fucking ridiculously long and exhausting
Yeah.
season,
Yeah.
and because it finished so successfully, is it hard then to kind of be like, right, just start again and like wipe it clean and go again?
Yeah, I was, it was nice to have a little downtime after. I mean, I coach other athletes, so obviously, you can't just shut it off. But like, yeah, it was exhausting, and I think more than anything, just what it took, as an affiliate owner and as a coach this year. I think it was just one of those things that has just been hard, and then obviously with the family, I mean, having young children, it's that takes a lot out of you too. So
Don't know what you're talking about.
yeah, no, yeah. So, and then and honestly, this year, like now, it's funny is like, I've taken on more responsibility, right? Like I have my roster has gotten bigger, so we've kind of thrown a little bit more into the mix. But I don't know, man. I'm excited. I'm up for the challenge. Like I'm really excited about the athletes I'm working with, because they're really fucking good, and I feel like there's an opportunity to do some cool stuff, and I think so yeah, but for sure it was hard, and it's stressful, but at the same time, like I'm just so competitive, just a hugely competitive person, and I love, like, that's kind of what gets me going, and I love it, so I love the idea that we're coming into a new season, and there's new rules, and we'll kind of see how it evolves, but I'm stoked. I'm excited about it.
Yeah. Well, look, we'll finish with a quick fire.
Yeah,
So you that likes grid and CrossFit, speed is your is your
I love
ally.
it. Yeah, I love it.
Bike or run,
Bike,
row or ski,
bro.
grid or CrossFit.
Oh shit, you put me on the spot.
That was always coming.
Yeah. Oh my god. Oh jeez. Fuck. Um, I guess I have to say CrossFit,
Yeah. Even just
but fuck,
currently.
that's why I mean, I have to say CrossFit because it exists.
Yeah,
But
yeah,
fuck,
yeah,
I fucking love grid though.
yeah.
Don't get me wrong. Yeah.
Snatch or clean,
Clean. Oh god,
um,
yeah.
singing or coaching.
Wow. I was put on earth to sing.
Yeah.
Like that's what I was put on earth to do. But man, I love coaching. Yeah.
Athlete that you'd most like to work with.
Oh, boy, that's a great one. Athlete that I'd most like to work with. This is going to be controversial. Ricky Garrard.
Wow. Do you, would your first port of call be to help manage his outward persona?
I'm not just a big, like, I just like second chances,
Are you so
Like I,
you're obviously in the camp then of say Castro saying like once you've done your time and you've if you fuck up and make a mistake or do something wrong and you're punished for it, then that's the end of it.
he did this. If you do your time, I feel like you now have the opportunity to listen, like there's no reason why we shouldn't allow somebody a second chance. If you're out 4 years, you paid the penalty, like you know, like you now should have the ability to be able to rehabilitate and to be able to come and prove to people that you know you can do it the right way. And one thing that I do like, and I'll probably get killed for it, but that's fine. Like, I love the fact that the guy he's one of the guys that just doesn't have any fear, you know? Like, you watch him and he obviously is just not afraid of anything, and that's what I think is so cool. And I'd just be interested. I'd just be interested to talk to him, you know, like to understand kind of where his head's at and
Same.
what he wants to do. Yeah, I would love to. I just love to see it, and if it would work out, great, and if it wouldn't, it wouldn't. And I would be a hard ass. I would be on. There's not many, you know what I mean? Like, there's not many threats. I don't know that even there would be. I mean, listen, Matt's he is who he is. He's the Michael Jordan of this, you know. But I'd love for there to, and I like I said, I'm just a big believer in giving, you know, in second chances. So.
Yeah, I've heard a lot of people reference that about him, about that, like, you know, Matt seems to have, and he's mentioned it himself before, that thing of like, I'd sooner die out here than, you know, like when those moments come, like I'm willing to just be left here. Like, and I think I've heard a few people reference the fact that Ricky's probably the closest person that has that same attribute of like, I actually don't give a shit like what 10 minutes after the workout is like, I just want it now. And I think, you know, it's that killer instinct, I suppose, that, you know, we don't know the whole story, but maybe that's what drove what happened. And, you know, like it's that desperation to reach where you are. But I think, yeah, if you do take him on as a coach, I'd say your first job would be to get a social media manager or like a PR person.
You have to.
Yeah.
You have to. Yeah. But I mean, I think that's part of it, right? I think that's part of like the guidance, and, you know, like to have someone that can, you know, that can teach you how to do things a little differently and do things the right way. And now that you don't want to lose the edge, but at the same time,
it's that self-preservation. Like, you don't want to be the villain that it's not as fun to beat Matt Fraser if everyone's booing when you do it. Like, you know, you want
correct. Yeah. And I think listen, there's a great human story there. If he can come back and if he can do things the right way and be successful, there's a good story there. You know, and I think people like that, right? I think people, when people fall down, I think people like when you know, someone can build themselves back up and then prove that, like, I hit the bottom and now I can come back, you know. And I always think that's you know, that's a cool thing in life and in sports when we see that happen. So I'd be curious, you know, to at least have a conversation. Yeah.
I'll tell you what, I wasn't fucking expecting that answer.
See that?
Well, listen, Justin, thanks a million for coming on. I really appreciate taking time out. It was a pleasure to talk to you. I love these kind of ones. I've had a few of these this week where I kind of went in with no preconceptions of what the conversation is going to be like, and I've been pleasantly surprised again today. Awesome. So if I'm ever in Vegas, never
dude, come on, it's awesome here, you got to come.
Yeah, maybe.
Now if you come, please, man, you're always welcome, and we'll have some coffee. Sure.
Lovely, look forward to it. Cheers, thanks very much, enjoy the rest of your day.
All right, brother, you too.